1, 2, 3, 4. Sales tips with Zack. Yeah. Sales tips with Zack. Yeah. Have you ever wondered why you're not a better salesman? Perhaps you should try my new 1, 2, 3 tips for success. When you go into a sale, perhaps you're hamstringing yourself by being honest. That's right, being honest has great disadvantages. Oftentimes, you don't tell the customers what they need to hear to pull the trigger on that big sale. I have 3 different tips I like to employ, but because you're not paying for my seminar, I'm only going to give you 1. When I go into a sales call, oftentimes I will start with a story about one of my greatest fears. I just make up something. I almost drowned in a river. I almost was burned at the stake by pilgrims, whatever that might be. And then the person typically will respond with a story about their greatest fears. And once I know their greatest fear, then I can pounce on their weaknesses. Oh, what's that, Mrs. Johnson? You're afraid of swimming because a young boy drowned when you were growing up? Well, I'll tell you what, Mrs. Johnson. Make sure to choose my equipment, high SEER equipment with the proper float protections. It's up in the attic, and if that pan overflowed, it would be like 2011 Japan with a tsunami coming down through the ceiling. You wouldn't want any other tragedies to happen, would you?
Variable speed solves that problem.
And then later in that conversation, all that needs to be decided is whether or not we're going to use the halo or not. Welcome back to Zack Talk Shop. I left some posts on YouTube asking about the difficulty of the HVAC trade, and I split it into 2 parts. The first part was physically, the second part was mentally. Since the first one I did is physical, we'll start right there. I made it 1 through 5. 1 is easy, 5 is hard bro. That's what I wrote. Easy, somewhat easy, middle of the pack, somewhat difficult, hard bro. As of the time I'm staring at my phone here looking at it, there's 273 votes. The winning number was 3, middle of the pack. So most of you guys and gals out there think that HVAC is just right there in the middle. Not too difficult, not too easy. Kind of like the porridge that Little Red Riding Hood was looking for. Or is that Goldilocks? Yeah, Goldilocks was looking for the porridge. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to mix up my little girl fairy tale things. But 3, middle of the pack. So most of them were 3 to 5, though. Only 4% said easy. 5% said somewhat easy. 44%, almost half, said middle of the pack. 29% said somewhat difficult. And 17% of y'all are obese. And that's how that shakes out. And there's a lot of comments on this, too. So we're going to read some of the comments. We'll see if we got any goodies. And then we'll discuss some of like the difficulties of the trade, because it's got some difficulties. So there's lots of different comments. The first one I see here is doing an attic install when it's 140 in an attic with high humidity is the absolute worst. He said, but it's a free sauna though. So that's a real glass is half full kind of guy. The reply was true. I'm down in South Texas on the coast. I can definitely identify with people that work in hot attics. So attics are hot in the South. And they're hot in the southeast, and they're hot in the southwest. Obviously, in the desert, your attic's going to be hot. I've never been to a desert before, but I've definitely been to the attics here, and they're hot and humid, and that is a problem because in the summertime, especially the late summer, like August, late July, into September, but really August is the focal point in this area. It is so hot and humid that when you get up and walk outside to get in your van to go to the job, you're already sweating. You can't help it. There's been several days. I remember shooting a video several years ago. I want to say it's 2012 maybe. I think it's 2012 because I was putting a Heil package unit in. And I left the house at like 6 a.m. I was trying to get an early start on the job. And it was already 80 degrees. When it's 80 degrees at 6 a.m., you're going to have some problems. The next comment is from a homeowner, evidently. It says, as a homeowner that's overweight, my part of it is pretty easy. Hell, I just changed my own thermostat. I'll leave the rest of it to the professionals. I will do my own install of a mini split, though. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. There's parts of installing a mini split that's kind of difficult. The refrigeration section, unless you're getting one of those, pre-vacuum, pre-charged deals off the internet. I don't know, is it Mr. Cool? I can't remember. Which one do I have? I don't have Mr. Cool. Mr. Cool's the one I made fun of because, you just plug it together with the refrigeration lines and go, and it's perfect already. Seems like if anything goes wrong, though, you're totally screwed. I mean, if something doesn't connect right or you hear something leaking, you literally can do nothing about it. So that's kind of risky, but hey, it's up to people. Hey, this is America. You can install your own mini split. Go for it. I don't care. So that was a homeowner, so he don't count anyway. Hack-Free HVAC, one of the original HVAC YouTube channels out there. Attic jobs for residential summer jobs and carrying 200 pounds of gear up on an industrial rooftop in the Arizona summer is definitely above the middle of the pack. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and heart that comment because he's right on the money there. In fact, as I recall, this dude Hack-Free had made videos up on the roof years ago, and I want to say he's the one where the phone would stop working because it would overheat. Now, I know iPhones used to blow up anyway, but when it's 140 degrees on the roof, it's going to overheat and shut down. And it did. And that's just one of the extra things you get to deal with. Technology has limitations thermally. Go on to the next comment here. It's KW. Easy if you let it. Somewhat difficult at times, though. Just got to grind either way. You know what? That's simply put, but true. There's going to be days that are really, really difficult, but if you can kind of step back and say, well, after this day, it's going to be easy for a couple of days, or after this summer, or after this career, it's going to be easier, then you can probably comfort yourself that way. The next comment is, depends if you're doing service or install. Now, that's right on the money. As a service tech mainly throughout my career, I would go to these hot, awful locations because it seems like we're talking about hot stuff. It can be cold, though. We could talk cold as well. But I would go to these places, and at least I knew I was leaving after usually a few hours at the most. If I had to do some kind of major repair, typically I wasn't there all day on any one job. So that was nice. On install, I mean, I've dreaded. I remember. I don't remember if I filmed it or not for YouTube. I might have. I don't know. I might have been just burnt out or whatever. But there's a couple of them on YouTube that I did film. I know I filmed one with Palace back in the day, and it was super hot. It lasted like 4 days. And there was another one which I consider the pinnacle. It was a 5-day. It was all week. It was July, and I just dreaded it. And I was making good money, so that part was great. That was like, yes, this is great, but if I'm dead, it won't matter. It was so hot that week. And one of the things is when you put yourself in a position when you're working in those conditions, the temptation to cut corners gets high. So that's another reason to plan your jobs accordingly, because unless you're Mother Teresa up there, you're going to be like, well, I don't need to do this, or maybe I don't have to put this right where I wanted to. I can move it a little bit where it might be 90% as good, or you guys know what I'm talking about. You get up there and you start compromising your buns off because you don't want to have anything to do with that 140 degrees. And people listening to this who don't have any experience in the trade as far as the attics say, yeah, right, 140. Legit. It can be above 140 in the attic. If you have a certain, you have a certain location, you have a certain type of roof, and all that plays into everything. The color of the roof plays into something. Those of you who know about load calculation know that certain color roofs are going to transmit heat. Certain color roofs are going to reflect heat. That's why we have all this nice shiny stuff now. It reflects heat. There's reflection. But some roofs just suck it up. And you'll know in the wintertime where the crappy roofs are because the frost and the snow will melt off these roofs faster because they transmit more heat than other roofs. You can notice that driving around. There'll be one roof on a really well-insulated house that has like solid frost across the top. Then the house next door from like 1904 will have nothing on top because the wind just blows through it freely. All important things to think about in your HVAC life. Go on to the next comment. I've been a human waterfall. I like this guy already. I've been a human waterfall during rough ends in the Florida summer. Training and service hasn't been too bad, but I'm not on call yet. So I'm putting middle for my overall time with installs and service so far. Well, service is typically not as bad, but he did say Florida, so it's going to be hot. It's going to be awful. Looks like heat is what everybody was thinking about here. Clint's next. The summer heat and the ladders, one of the two is probably going to take me out. Clint is fighting a battle, and it's only a matter of time before he loses the battle to summer or a ladder. I've fallen off ladders, and I've definitely been too hot in the summertime, so I can sympathize. Marco is next. Service work is pretty easy physically. When he says this, though, I'm pretty sure Marco's in Massachusetts. And as we all know, Massachusetts is 2,500 degrees cooler than Florida. I just want to put that out there before I read this comment. And if I remember that incorrectly, Marco, I'm sorry. But I'm pretty sure you had an accent when you called into the show that time, and I think you're in Massachusetts. And my experience with Massachusetts is watching Steve Lav up in the attic saying, wow, it's hot today, 80. And I knew everything I needed to know about Massachusetts weather after that statement. Of course, all that may be wrong based on my faulty recollection. So, no one's ever going to know probably. Marco says service work is pretty easy physically. Now you install guys work, but service is not brutal on the body. That's true. Most of the time, service isn't that bad. If you take precautions and you're properly equipped, meaning you're not trying to lift up a 10-ton compressor with your arms, stuff like that, then you will preserve your body just fine. If you take the necessary steps and you demand that those who employ you also take those steps and don't try to force you into doing something, then it's going to get you dieted somewhere along the way. You don't want it. The next guy is going for movie quotes. He's like, if it were easy, everyone would do it. I can just imagine a fan blowing his hair backwards, and he turns to you in a Clint Eastwood way, says, if it were easy, everyone would do it. I think it's going to sound good. That's a good comment, man. You get movie comment of the week. If it were easy, everyone would do it. I'm a heart that comment just because I think that I can see Bruce Willis say, poor Bruce Willis. Those of you who don't know, Bruce Willis can't even talk anymore. Our hero growing up, he's aged. He is mute, I believe, and I guess it's some form of Alzheimer's or whatever it is. I'm not quite sure, but it's just very sad that Bruce Willis is no longer kind of with us communication-wise. I just found that out recently, so it's really fresh for me, and it just reminds me that we're all getting older. And you need to make your peace with Jesus. Next comment. Let's not get heavy just yet. I know you guys understand hot. Oh, yeah. See, this guy's going to divert off hot. Good. I can tell he's going to divert away from hot. I know you guys understand hot, but most of you don't understand Arizona hot. Never mind. It's still about hot. Good night, 11. Just as I don't snow. Another guy replies, oh, yeah, Arizona is its own level of hot. There's hot, and then there's Arizona hot. And then I'm going to add something, and then there's Arizona iced tea. And then you have hot, and Arizona iced tea, which means that is a cure for Arizona hot. Y'all stop complaining. No one talked about cold. And it's winter. You ever work on a heat pump in the snow? That kind of sucks too, because it's like, well, at least we're not sweating. Yeah, mushy snow, slush and crap gets everywhere. It's awful. And I don't even work in the snow, I didn't, but like once a year or once every 2 or 3 years. And I remember it because it sucks so much. So, just want to impart that wisdom, guys. And we can move on to the mental section next.
Sponsors, go!
If you run a home service business like painting, contracting, lawn care, or cleaning, your to-do list is endless. From hiring staff to mountains of paperwork, not to mention doing the actual work that pays the bills. Jobber is a mobile and online app that helps you organize your business and look professional. With Jobber, you can quote jobs, schedule your crew, invoice, and get paid all in one place. Try it free today at getjobber.com/shop talk.
So HVAC mentally, is it more difficult than HVAC is physically? Well, according to our 184 votes that I see tallied here right now, they say somewhat hard. So the same 1 through 5 scale is 4 instead of 3. So I guess it is more difficult mentally than physically. 4% said easy, 7% said somewhat easy, 32% said medium, 45% said somewhat hard, and 13% said hard. So more than half of everybody put hard or somewhat hard. So there's not as many comments on this one. Let's get to the comments. First one from HVAC Depot. got me here. As of now, I am commissioning agent, and that's one of the best jobs as far as stress level. It's more of a technical job, which I naturally attract to. In my career, I was general manager of a commercial HVAC company, and that was a true hell. So general manager must be very stressful. In my capacity as an owner, I didn't deal with everything a stereotypical general manager would deal with, but I can sympathize with portions of it for sure. Over 14 years of my 25-year career, I was a project manager on a big commercial project or big commercial projects. It was a medium stress job, so it really depends. But any management job is a way more stressful and has less sense of achievement than an engineer or technical position, since you are responsible for the things you have little or no control over. Yep, getting into the driver's seat is difficult because as a technician or installer, there is somebody that's going to tell you what to do. And then your difficulty is doing the job in an efficient manner, physically accomplishing the job, and dealing with the mental stress that comes with physical stress and the mental stress that can come from certain ways that bosses act sometimes. But it's less mental stress, more physical stress, because you just have to get the job done. You don't have to worry about typically getting permits. You don't have to worry about working out supplies. Another person does that. So you just do the work. There is a nice bliss in the ignorant bliss of being a grunt. It is a nice thing in certain ways. Now, you don't make any money. Typically, you're young when you have this job anyway. You might think you do make money. I remember I was so happy when I got my first paycheck for a 40-hour week. That paycheck was $162. That was what I got to keep. Now, you younger guys be like, was this at an iPhone factory or something? No, it was not at the iPhone factory. I was not building Temu goods. The year was 1994 or 95. I can't remember when I actually got my first full week paycheck, but I only made like $5 and something an hour. It was either 5 something or 4 something because minimum wage was much lower back then. But I was pretty stoked that I could buy DVDs. That was later on because DVDs weren't out yet. Oh man, I am super old. I could buy the latest cassette tape or CD. There were CDs and cassettes, or the latest vinyl or 8-track. I could get that great Alanis Morissette CD or Nirvana. That's the era I'm talking about. But it's nice to, when you're young, you don't care. I mean, you got some money, you're happy. And there's a bliss to just, being the guy who just has to carry stuff out, don't have to think about it, doesn't have to plan nothing. That's a nice thing. But typically, once you move up the ladder, you get more mental responsibility. You have to acquire mental stress. And a good part of your life is decided by how well you deal with that. So getting that stress is actually a good thing because it conditions you and tempers you to deal with stress. I think it's the people that like to avoid stress at all costs that get into a lot of trouble. Like, you know what I'm talking about. You can even think of like an addiction. If you have an addiction to like, say, pills or drugs or something, every time you feel bad, you're not used to feeling bad. You can just take this thing and feel better. But soon that baseline changes and all of a sudden you need more and more and more. The term suck it up, buttercup, deals with that. Now, I'm not trying to say that about drug addicts. It's a very difficult thing to overcome addiction. But the example was made to show you that avoiding stress will not benefit you. At some point, you have to employ willpower, and you have to have some concept of where you need to go in life. For those of you who don't get to hear the behind-the-scenes stuff here, I just had to pause this and just hack my guts up because the entire family, when you have kids, sicknesses abound. Jackson had strep last week. Like the entire family was sick in one way, shape, or form over the last 2 weeks. So although I feel relatively good, once I get to a certain point and I'm talking and talking and talking, I just have to hit that pause button and let the most I don't know, tuberculosis sounding cough come out, I feel like I'm Doc Holliday. And not the cool Doc Holliday that's like, I'm your Huckleberry. Not that one. The one that's just like dying from tuberculosis. Let's get to the next comment before it comes back. Will get tougher if they keep pushing the new flammable refrigerants. Techs will need new sets of gauges, hoses, and a recovery machine. Yep. It looks like, whereas before we kind of blew it all out of proportion, we need hoses for every oil, every refrigerant, which turned out not to be true. With this, they do require specialty equipment. There's a lot more careful thought that goes into dealing with things that can be flammable. Now, flammable is a relative term. Everything will burst into flames if you make it hot enough, but these refrigerants are somewhat flammable, like R32. Then we get into R290. You got a lot of flammability. So there are new practices and new equipment that you're going to have. And it is a challenge. Guys have been overcoming challenges like this for a long time, and I'm sure that all of you will be able to do it. Just the biggest issue is, this one's big because you had to get potentially new recovery machines. There's all these gray bottles out there. It's a time that's tumultuous in our lives. KW says, mind over matter. And the response is, true, gets harder and harder and more matters to come into mind, though. That's funny. He's reversing his comment to make it negative. Which, as you get older, there's more problems for you to deal with mentally. They build up. You don't dissipate those. They build up. And like I said, a lot of life is decided by your ability to just take these challenges and deal with them and get better at it. I think that's probably the best thing you can do is accept challenges and overcome them. Here's our last comment thread. It is the easiest trade of them all. There's no fixing anymore. It's all about replacing equipment instead of repairing it. Techs nowadays are nothing but salespeople. And the response is, if you spot it, you got it. Laziness. There's plenty of stuff like that to go around. But you know what? A lot of that stuff has been around for a long, long time. It just looked different. There wasn't all the technology, but you still had your used car salesman of every time period. There'll always be lazy people to try to cut corners. And if you see that person, the biggest thing I think, my advice to you would be, don't get wrapped up in thinking you got to be that way to make money or be successful. Part of me thought that for a while. Says, do I have to actually stoop to this level or just do this stuff which bothers my conscience to make success and fend for my family? And the answer is no. You can be honest and be successful. Now, there's ultra rich people out there that have done things wrong and have gotten these riches, and they're never going to get caught, never called out by it. And one other piece of advice I have is don't get wrapped up in why those people don't come to justice or why you don't have what they have. Because in the end, stuff like that, it don't matter. It really doesn't matter how much money you have. You don't need excesses. You don't need crazy stuff. You just need to be happy in your life. And like I said, go find Jesus. Go look for Jesus, man. It's not a joke. Go find him. He's out there. He'll take some of this worry away from you. And that's a legit thing, guys. If you go consult Jesus, and if you don't know anything about him, investigate that a little bit. One of the biggest surprises in my life was reading the Bible. And not just because it was the Word of God. And I finally got to hear what our Father in heaven wanted from us and communicated to us to make our lives better. But I got to see how little the people around me, the ones in church, knew about the Bible. So it's an interesting thing. Find out things for yourself. Don't get your knowledge secondhand. Research things. If something sounds strange, if someone sounds like they're just speaking out of hate without thinking about it, investigate. Figure it out. You're smarter than me. I don't even know why you listen to this show. But I'm glad that you do. I'll see you on the next one.
It's time for the TrueTechTools.com
Tool Spotlight. Hey, buy them. Today on the TrueTechTools.com Tool Spotlight, we have the Yellow Jacket 95780 Turbo Recover brushless refrigerant recovery machine. So a brushless machine means typically using a more efficient motor. Well, it's got a strap on it too, guys, so you can carry it. That is not the second thing I should mention about this, though. When you mention the strap too early, it makes it seem like there's no other good features, and that would be a bald-faced lie. It's fast and effective refrigerant recovery. Brushless technology is the newest technology. It's rated for use with A2L refrigerants, which is a really necessary thing that's coming up, unfortunately. Got to have the equipment to deal with A2Ls. It has a high airflow fan with micro channel condenser to keep the unit running cooler, no pressure overloads, or I won't say none because there's always those special hot days and circumstances, but less high pressure situations while you're trying to quickly recover refrigerant so you can actually do a repair. I know people hate standing up on a rooftop waiting for refrigerant recovery when you have a 4-hour repair after it. It can be frustrating. And the best thing about this machine is it's made by Yellow Jacket, so you know it's going to be an awesome recovery machine. And because Yellow Jacket and TruTech Tools are now linked up, you can save 8% off of this and many more purchases by using my Shop Talk discount code. And when we're talking 8% off a recovery machine, we're talking about a significant amount of money. So no matter what you're buying at TruTech Tools, make sure to use my discount code, because that tells TruTech Tools that I'm important. And we need to tell them as often as possible. To make these purchases, go to TruTechTools.com.
No, don't